Imagine knowing that 90% of the people who jump out of an airplane are going to have their parachutes fail.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's basically a death sentence.
Right. It's practically a death sentence. But now imagine looking at the line of people waiting to jump and seeing that line grow by 7.5% every single year.
So people are just fighting to get on the plane.
Exactly. People are literally fighting to get on. And that is the statistical reality of modern entrepreneurship right now.
Yeah.
You scrape together, say, 8 to 10 lakhs.
Which is what, roughly 10 to 12,000 US dollars?
Yeah, around there. And you pour your blood, your sweat, your tears into a business. And mathematically, you are almost guaranteed to lose everything.
It is a genuinely terrifying scenario, I mean, when you put it like that.
Yeah.
And it really frames the central tension we are looking at today, because the other side of that statistical coin is just as extreme.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, if 90% of businesses fail, you have to ask, why jump at all? Well, as the YouTube video we are unpacking today points out, 90% of the world's wealth belongs to just 10% of the population.
Which is a crazy statistic on its own.
Right. And crucially, none of the people in that top 10% are working standard jobs. Zero.
Wow.
They're the ones who jumped out of the plane and just figured out how to build a working parachute on the way down.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because you, sitting there listening, as someone living and working in this economy, you're caught right in the middle.
Yeah, caught between this incredible incentive to build wealth and this massive, terrifying cliff edge of failure.
Exactly. So today, our mission for this deep dive is to decode the fundamental mechanics of the most resilient business sectors out there right now. We're basing this on a really fascinating presentation by creator Ashutosh Pradehast.
Titled Top 4 Business Ideas in 2025.
Right. And the goal here is to move past the fear of economic slowdowns and look at the actual engines of growth.
Because Ashutosh identifies 4 specific evergreen sectors to help you avoid becoming part of that 90% failure rate.
And the first one he points out is all about movement.
Yeah.
Specifically, indirect transportation.
Right. The most visible layer of modern convenience, getting physical things from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And to really understand the sheer scale of this, we have to look beyond just the dates and the valuations. Though, I mean, the numbers are wild.
You really are. Like, the video highlights that Amazon's India operations alone did over 20,000 crore rupees in business by 2022.
It's just massive.
And Flipkart, they do roughly 50,000 crore annually. That's over $6 billion US dollars.
Yeah, and then you have Swiggy hitting a $10 million valuation around 2022.
But, just rattling off numbers doesn't really explain why these companies are essentially bulletproof.
No, it doesn't.
Because I used to think they were just these massive retailers, but they aren't. I mean, they don't actually make anything.
What's fascinating here is the underlying mechanism of their success. When you look closely at the newer players scaling at these breakneck speeds.
Like Zepto and Rapido.
Exactly. Zepto, Rapido, Dunzo, Grofers, Delivery. They don't produce the products they sell. They aren't manufacturing the smartphones. They aren't farming the groceries. And they definitely aren't cooking your dinner.
Right.
Their entire business model is simply removing friction. They focus entirely on solving the friction between buyers and sellers.
The crowds, the bargaining, the sheer time it takes.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, well, think about the people who sold pickaxes during the gold rush.
Oh, I like that.
Right.
Right.
Like, rather than mining for gold themselves, they just supply the tools.
Mm-hmm.
These companies aren't cooking the food or making the gadget. They are just building the toll roads.
Yeah, they are essentially digital air traffic controllers. Think about an air traffic controller. They don't own the airplanes. They don't own the luggage. They don't buy the jet fuel.
They just own the invisible math that keeps all those planes from crashing into each other.
Exactly. These logistics companies are doing the exact same thing on the ground. They are coordinating the chaos.
That is such a better way to conceptualize it. Because before these platforms existed, the transaction between a buyer and a seller was highly inefficient.
Oh, incredibly. If you wanted something, you had to physically go out, navigate the traffic, deal with huge crowds, haggle over prices.
Just waste hours of your day.
Right. And these platforms built the invisible infrastructure to solve that. Take Zepto, for instance, offering 10-minute grocery delivery.
Which still blows my mind, by the way.
It's crazy. But they aren't succeeding because they have better tomatoes than the local market. They succeed because they mastered the mechanics of micro-fulfillment centers.
The dark stores.
Yeah. They use algorithms to predict exactly what a specific neighborhood will order. They stock a dark store within a 2-mile radius, and they route a driver the second you hit confirm.
So they're basically monetizing the infrastructure of convenience.
Yes.
And once you solve the physical friction of moving goods, the logical next frontier for these tech models is moving intangibles.
Which brings us to the second massive sector Ashutosh identifies.
Right. The frictionless delivery of knowledge, otherwise known as the EdTech boom.
Moving from physical logistics to intellectual logistics. And this sector, it's supercharged by a very specific cultural engine, particularly in India.
Oh, the priority on education.
Yes. The video points out that Indian parents have this deep-seated historical priority when it comes to education. They will dedicate their entire lives and savings to ensure their children get access to learning.
Yeah, that cultural foundation created a landscape where companies like Udemy, Byju's, Unacademy, they achieved multi-billion-dollar valuations seemingly overnight.
Udemy hitting $4 billion, Byju's reaching $16.5 billion by 2018. It's staggering.
But the landscape is shifting, right? From formal academics like math and science to literally everything else.
Oh, absolutely. You can monetize knowing how to edit videos, play guitar, trade stocks. Ashutosh mentions everything from knitting a sweater to operating a rocket.
Okay, but let me push back a little here.
Sure.
If anyone can teach anything online now, and if a lot of this information is technically already available for free out there on the internet, does the actual value come from the information itself? Or is it the community and curation the platform provides? Because honestly, it feels like we are drowning in free tutorials.
I see your point about information abundance, but Ashutosh argues that curation is the product. Think about the last time you tried to learn a complex hobby on YouTube.
Oh, usually a nightmare.
Right. You probably watched 3 videos, realized they were totally out of order, got overwhelmed by unskippable ads, and just gave up.
Yeah, pretty much.
That frustration you felt, that is the friction these platforms are monetizing. They are taking chaotic, abundant information and organizing it into a digestible, structured sequence.
Which explains how you get these wild scaling trajectories. The video actually uses the creator's own platform, iDigitalpreneur, as a case study.
Yeah, he started that in December 2020.
Right, focusing on teaching people high-paying business skills. And in almost exactly 2 years, they claim to have taken the valuation to over 100 crores.
Which is mind-boggling speed.
It really is.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, that speed is only possible because of a concept called zero marginal cost.
Okay, break that down for us.
Well, for decades, the education sector meant brick-and-mortar institutions. If a university wants to teach 100 more students, what do they have to do?
They have to build a new classroom.
Right. Build a room, hire another professor, pay more for electricity and maintenance.
Hard physical costs.
Exactly. But in digital education, you film a comprehensive course on video editing or stock trading exactly once.
Oh, I see.
It costs the company the exact same amount of money to stream that course to 10 people as it does to 10,000 people.
So the cost of adding one more user is literally zero, which means the revenue from user number 11 all the way up to 10,000 is almost entirely profit.
That's how you scale to 100 cores in 2 years. You decouple the knowledge from the physical classroom.
You package a unique skill, and because the internet gives you global reach, you can essentially become your own institution.
It fundamentally democratizes who gets to be a teacher and who gets to be a student.
All right, so we have the delivery of physical goods and the digital scaling of knowledge. Both of those are essentially built on shifts in technology and consumer behavior.
Right.
But what happens when you strip away the tech layer and look at pure, unavoidable biological necessity combined with massive population growth?
That leads directly into the third and fourth sectors. And Ashutosh groups them closely together because they are in this constant symbiotic relationship. Food and health.
So let's start with food, because the underlying culture here is just vital.
It really is. There's this great observation in the presentation about India's profound love for food. It's uniquely diverse. He notes that the language and the local delicacies literally change every 100 kilometers you travel.
And that diversity isn't just a fun fact for a travel vlog. It's a massive economic playground.
Exactly.
We already talked about how giant platforms like Swiggy combine food with transportation logistics. But the video points out that you don't have to build a multi-billion-dollar app to tap into this sector.
No, not at all. This sector is incredibly resilient precisely because the barrier to entry is so low now. You have platforms like Fresh Menu, Fossos, Magic Pin, Easy Diner.
An infinite micro-business idea.
Yes, this is where those logistics networks we discussed earlier actually empower the individual. Think about a micro business like a home tiffin service, providing home-cooked meals to office workers.
Right.
10 years ago, a home chef couldn't possibly afford to hire a delivery fleet.
It would ruin their margins instantly.
But today, because companies like Dunzo and Rapido exist as essentially a shared public utility, that home chef can reach thousands of customers. They just cook. The network handles the friction.
So whether it's a microgreen farm, homemade pet food, or a regional delicacy vlog, the digital infrastructure has made food entrepreneurship hyper-local but massively scalable.
Exactly.
But, food is only half of this biological equation. And honestly, this is the part of Ashutosh's thesis that really made me pause.
The health sector connection.
Yeah. To understand why the health sector is positioned for such foolproof, evergreen growth, the video takes us on this 75-year historical detour.
Right. Tracing the demographic data back to 1947. At the time of Indian independence, the population was roughly 39 crore.
Okay.
By 2022, that population had exploded to 141 crore,
That is an increase of over 1 billion people in just 75 years.
which presents a terrifying logistical nightmare. How do you feed an extra billion people when your total arable land area hasn't changed at all?
You can't just invent more land.
No. So historically, the answer was the Green Revolution in the 1960s. To massively and artificially increase crop yields, traditional farming was completely overhauled.
Right. Modern irrigation, high-yield variety seeds.
And crucially, chemical pesticides and synthetic fertilizers became the norm. It was a mathematical necessity of scale. You needed maximum output per acre just to prevent famine.
Well, here's where it gets really interesting. And, frankly, fairly dark.
Yeah.
Because Ashutosh lays out a very specific causal chain here. Now, we should point out for the listener that we are just reporting Ashutosh's views from the source text.
Yeah.
This is a highly debated topic among agronomists and public health experts. But he argues that the Green Revolution had a devastating long-term biological cost.
He argues that the massive increase in chemical and fertilizer use directly led to widespread soil degradation and water contamination.
Right. According to the video, this environmental shift is exactly why reverse osmosis RO water purifiers suddenly became a mandatory appliance in every single household.
Because you could no longer trust the groundwater. But more significantly, Ashutosh draws a straight line between these agricultural changes and a massive spike in lifestyle diseases.
Conditions that were relatively rare a generation ago are now ubiquitous. Diabetes, thyroid issues, high blood pressure.
He points out that these exist in almost every single family now.
The paradox sitting in the middle of this thesis is incredible, right? The agricultural solutions that were engineered in the 1960s to sustain the food sector directly catalyzed the modern health crises that the health tech sector is now monetizing.
It is an endless feedback loop. The faster and more efficiently we produce and deliver food, the more collateral impact there is on public health.
Which immediately generates demand for companies to manage that fallout.
Exactly. This is why you see the explosion of health tech startups. Post-COVID, the awareness of wellness is huge. So companies like PharmEasy, NetMeds, Healthify Maine, Tata Health, Practo, they are stepping in to manage a crisis of scale.
Because humans will never stop needing to eat. And if Ashutosh's causal chain holds true, we will subsequently never stop needing healthcare to manage the consequences of what and how we eat.
That is why these two sectors are essentially immune to temporary economic slowdowns. They aren't trends. They are biological imperatives.
Okay, so we've mapped the territory here. We understand the mechanics of logistics, the zero marginal cost scaling of ed tech, the cultural and infrastructural power of food, and the inevitable necessity of health tech.
We know exactly where the resilient money is.
But that brings us right back to the psychological cliff edge we started with at the top of the show.
Yes. The 90% failure rate.
Right. Knowing that the logistics sector is booming doesn't automatically protect you from that statistic when you actually try to build a business in it.
No, it certainly doesn't.
Borrowing 10 lakhs from your family is just as terrifying whether you're opening a restaurant or building a delivery app.
And this is where Ashutosh pivots to the psychology of risk. Because having information about booming sectors is not the same thing as having execution skills.
Very true.
The video uses a very evocative metaphor here. He says jumping into a business without having foundational skills is exactly like jumping into the middle of the ocean without ever having learned to swim in a pool first.
Which people do all the time. People love to romanticize the hustle of entrepreneurship. You see it constantly on social media. Just dive into the deep end, figure it out, sink or swim.
Yeah, that hustle culture.
But the reality is, when real capital and your family's livelihood are on the line, the deep end usually just drowns you. The ocean doesn't care how passionate you are.
No, it really doesn't. The argument here is that you must find a risk-free environment to learn the basics. A swimming pool where you literally can't drown.
Somewhere to practice.
Right. You need to understand sales, digital marketing, communication, and basic financial literacy before you deploy major capital.
Which is logically where Ashutosh pitches his own educational platform as that safe swimming pool.
Exactly. A place to learn from successful entrepreneurs without risking your life savings up front.
I understand the pitch, and it makes sense, but I have to ask, is there truly such a thing as a risk-free business environment? It feels like a bit of a contradiction.
This raises an important question. The phrase risk-free is definitely a marketing term. In the real world, the act of creating value from nothing always carries inherent risk.
Right, you're always risking something.
Even if you aren't risking millions of rupees, you are risking your time, your reputation, and the opportunity cost of what else you could be doing. However, Ashutosh is making a distinction between financial capital and skill capital.
Okay, I see.
You can build skill capital with very low financial risk, and once you have the skills, the financial risk of starting a real business drops significantly.
So, what does this all mean? For you, the listener,
Well,
if we synthesize the ultimate takeaway from this presentation, it's that the only true insurance policy you have against becoming part of that 90% failure statistic isn't picking the perfect, magical sector.
no.
It's the deliberate, unglamorous acquisition of fundamental skills. The sectors, logistics, ed tech, food, health, they simply provide the fertile ground. But your skills are the only thing that determine whether the seeds you plant will actually grow or just rot in the soil.
Beautifully put. We've traced an incredible interconnected web today. We looked at the massive logistical air traffic controllers coordinating our physical goods.
The toll roads.
Right. We explored the digital scaling of knowledge, where zero marginal cost economics means a unique skill can become a multi-million-dollar institution overnight.
We unpacked the cultural machinery of food.
And the reactionary, inescapable necessity of modern healthcare, driven by our own massive population growth.
So whether you are looking to start a side hustle, figure out where to invest your savings, or, honestly, if you just want to understand the underlying mechanics of the city you live in, these four sectors are the tectonic plates shifting beneath our feet right now. They are the forces shaping 2025 and beyond.
But before we wrap up, there is one final thread from this transcript that we need to pull on.
Oh,
It builds on the very first manifesto Ashutosh made about wealth, but it requires us to look a little deeper at the mechanics we just spent this whole time praising.
you mean the claim that 90% of the world's wealth is held by 10% of the people, and that none of those top 10% work a traditional job?
Exactly. The video praises the brilliant, friction-removing business models of companies like Swiggy, Uber, Zepto, and Delivery. And purely from a business engineering standpoint, those trillion rupee valuations are phenomenal.
But think about the daily operational reality of those specific businesses. The founders, the venture capitalists, the massive equity holders, they are firmly planted in that top 10% of wealth.
They are the business owners.
Right. But their entire model, the entire infrastructure of convenience that delivers your groceries in 10 minutes, is built exclusively on the backs of millions of gig workers.
Yes. The delivery drivers navigating dangerous traffic, the riders out in the monsoon rain, the warehouse packers working at breakneck speeds in those dark stores.
These are people who are, by definition, working a job.
And often, because of the gig economy structure, they are working those jobs without the traditional safety nets, healthcare, or stability of formal employment.
They are the friction removers, but they don't own the toll road.
No, they don't.
So the provocative question I want to leave you with today is this. Are these massive, highly efficient tech platforms actually creating a new, democratized generation of wealthy business owners? Or have they simply invented a brilliant algorithmic way to keep millions of people firmly planted in the 90%? Just some food for thought as you look at the apps on your phone and decide whether you want to build the toll road or just keep paying to cross it. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us.